I had started with not really valuing my time at all, especially on weekends and evenings, where I would try to do everything myself, from property management perspective, repair coordination with tenants, renovations, whatever it may be.
There is a new American dream. One that doesn't involve working till you're 65 before you start enjoying life. If you're someone looking for ways to regain control over your time and check off that bucket list now, you're in the right place. We share tips from experts on investing, personal finance, and mindset so that you can finally have the freedom to work less and live more. This is the Freedom Investing Podcast with your host, Chris Toribio.
What's going on, everyone? This is Chris Toribio with the Freedom Investing Podcast, and I'm so happy you're here to join us for another amazing episode. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our latest episodes. Moving on to today's guest, we have Dana Dunford. Dana is the CEO of Hemlane, a technology-enabled property management platform. She is a strong advocate for purchasing properties anywhere, as the best investments are not typically in your backyard. She supports real estate investors in setting up the most intelligent process to manage rentals from a distance while connecting them with local licensed professionals. In 2018, Dana was named one of the top 20 women leaders and influencers in commercial real estate tech. Dana previously worked at Apple on their worldwide financial planning and analysis team, and at Nest, the home technology company acquired by Google for $3.2 billion in business development. She received her MBA from Harvard Business School. In her free time, Dana is an avid equestrian, a paraglider, and a skier. She's the first woman to win a calf dressing championship belt buckle in the CA Rodeo. She takes risks in her personal life, but spends her work life advocating technology and prudent spending for a risk-mitigated solutions to real estate management. Dana, welcome to the show. Before we dive into it, give us a quick 2-minute rundown of who you are, your background, and where you are in your journey to achieving time freedom.
Great. So my name's Dana, and I live in San Francisco. So basically the tech capital of the world, should I say. And for many folks out here listening to this, probably getting that financial freedom is not something that you think about in your 20s at all. I'm in my late 30s right now, but was something that I had a couple of key mentors in my 20s that got me to start thinking about how to save money and invest it wisely. And that were family members, right? And so I started in my 20s starting to think about how do I save money to put it into real estate. In hindsight, I should have bought a lot more real estate back then, back when interest rates were low, property prices had fallen. But I did have a couple of mentors from my family that basically said, Dana, you work really hard. You basically toss this money from tech just into the stock market. Why don't you have a little bit more control over it? Because when you're 40, when you're 50, your life is going to change and you're going to think a lot about how do you make your money work for you better. And so you should start getting that set up now, today. So that's a little bit about me personally. Professionally, I also had this kind of passion to also make a big change and a difference in the world, and that led to me thinking about how do I go out there and for real estate investing, make it easier. And so that was basically the company, Hemlane, which is this, we are a venture-backed company with over 20,000 rentals that we manage, and really helping folks think about their time and how they spend it. Chris, probably very similar to a lot of people on that are listening. I had started with not really valuing my time at all, especially on weekends and evenings, where I would try to do everything myself, from property management perspective, repair coordination with tenants, renovations, whatever it may be. And what I've learned over time, and especially as I get older and hopefully wiser, that setting up really good systems and processes and making sure you're spending your time on the things that really matter and will move the needle are super important. and then hiring other experts to do everything else are super important. And so that's kind of what got me passionate, one about property management, but also providing alternative ways to think about managing your properties so that you don't have a complete time investment, 1,000% just in doing administrative tasks.
Very cool.
All right, Dana. So you had mentioned that earlier on you were actually exposed to the benefits of real estate. And at the same time, your firsthand experience in trying to manage these properties all by yourself without any systems caused you to kind of explore this opportunity to figure out a way to make this a little bit more of a seamless experience for other landlords. So interestingly enough, I was assuming that you were actually in tech first, but it sounds like you had actually had experience in the real estate industry before you actually jumped into it with your career. Is that correct?
It was at the same time. So I was working at Apple on new product introductions there, on the basically market analysis finance side. And then while I was doing that, looking at real estate to invest, my brother-in-law and my sister were invested in real estate, and I saw the value of what they were doing. This was back in 2009. And so I think there were a couple of things that I knew were going to happen, and this was basically over 3 years, 3 to 4 years. The first was I knew that everyone was going to start using software to collect rent, to advertise their rental. Like any of this stuff that could be automated was just basically going to happen through technology. So that was one trend that I saw. But on that same trend, one of the things that I personally realized in managing our properties was it is not actually going to change the stress and the anxiety of owning a rental property yourself, because software and that automation takes away part of the pain, but it doesn't take away the main pain of communication, repair coordination, showing your rental property. So that was the second trend that I saw. Hey, if we don't change something here, people are still going to have a really difficult time investing in real estate, because today 72% of rental owners self-manage their properties. So mass market is not using a
Wow.
traditional manager, and they're all feeling that pain. So if we aren't able to help them and figure out a way to actually change things that traditional technology can't change, like traditional software, then we're still going to have folks kind of step out of the real estate industry on the investment side, or not choose real estate as an investment vehicle because of the property management. Like it's easier to just purchase a property. That doesn't take too long, but then you've got to manage this thing for 10 years. So that was the second trend that I saw. And then the third trend that I saw, this actually came from my time at Nest when I was in home technology, was that home technology was going to change the game, and that was through hardware. So how do you combine hardware, software, and service together to basically open up the opportunity and options for property management and create some sort of alternative? So those were the three trends that I saw. Today, it's still very much true, where software is basically a race to the bottom. There's a ton of software companies out there. Landlords are really willing to pay like basically almost $0 for like rent collection. You see it with Venmo or PayPal. Like that's basically a race to the bottom. But it's super important in the backbone of building something that is going to stand the test of time and automate your process. Then the second was the basically how do you connect humans on that platform, the same platform that does software? How do you do that? That was the next thing that we started innovating with. And then finally, the hardware side is an interesting one, because with rental properties and property management and real estate investing, if you think about it, any sort of hardware for smart home technology for your home, it usually starts with your primary residence, like the Nest and the Ring doorbell. And it takes a while to get to the rental industry. And so we're just now seeing that now that, whether it's like leak detection, or it is how do you do remote self-guided tours, or not remote self-guided tours, like in-person self-guided tours for tenants. How do you get all that stuff out? That is now suddenly starting to happen. But we had to wait 7 years to get there. Like when we started thinking about this, it was before that was even a thing.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I didn't realize that statistic that nearly it's like 70 something percent of people still self manage to this day. And so, traditionally we always talk about how actually real estate is pretty archaic in the sense where when it comes to adapting technology, it tends to be lagging behind some other industries. Everything from the way real estate is transacted to the way some properties are managed, et cetera, et cetera. And you make a good point that if you can figure out a way to kind of ease the pain of that ongoing management of someone's assets, they may be more inclined to signing on to some sort of solution to that long term. I can speak for myself in the properties that we currently have. We use a software for property management, but it mostly takes care of the payments solution, as you were mentioning earlier. Yeah. We do the payments, we have our leases signed and everything through there. But the moment that there's something physical that comes up in the property, it still requires that ongoing communication and that coordination with whoever's the appropriate contractor to go out there and solve that solution. And so when it comes to Hemlane, kind of describe to us a little bit about the difference between what this service has to offer as opposed to the traditional forms of self-management software that's currently on the market.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we do there, and it's really on the communication side, because properties and managing them and collecting rent is not a big deal, especially if you've screened your tenants and you have tenants who pay rent on time. But a couple of things that we went into, kind of in that middle category of saying, hey, software like a SaaS as a service does not solve pain points. A couple of things that we went into that said, hey, we're going to take this one step farther and connect humans with humans. I'll give you a couple examples. The first one is repair coordination. And so if your tenant has a repair request, they can call our number at any time, 24/7, or they could just submit it online. And there's troubleshooting. So it takes them through, how do you de-escalate this? Like if there's a water pipe that burst, how do you shut off the main valve? All these different types of things to help de-escalate. And then 7% of requests we close without ever sending out a service professional. It might be something as simple as flipping a breaker to, hey, here's exactly how you can unclog your drain on your own before we would send out an expensive plumber. So that way we're able to take that communication 1,000% off the owner. Like the owner doesn't have to worry about it. Then if troubleshooting doesn't work and we do need to send out a service professional, we can work with the owner's list of contractors, their plumber, their handyman, their electrician, or we can send out our own from our own network of service professionals. And then we have their thresholds and all of that to basically go through and say, at this point, we would call the owner. But this provides a much more hands-off experience. The difference between us and a traditional manager in this sense is the owner still gets that transparency and visibility. And so they still get to see all of our threads and conversations with the tenant. They can jump into the conversation at any time and say, hide from tenant, I actually think I want this handled this way or that way. And so we provide them with and empower them to manage their rental properties basically from anywhere. I mean, Chris, you just got back from vacation, holiday, you had said. You can manage it from the beach wherever you are, and be able to do that and still feel like you have that control, but you have someone there who's helping you along the way, who just happens to know how to coordinate repairs very well, and how to fix repairs as well, because that's important when you're talking to the service professional, like the plumber on the phone, to make sure the plumber knows what they're talking about as well.
Yeah, you make a really good point in that you don't necessarily have to actually be within the area if an issue does come up. You can be somewhere on vacation, you can be out of the country, as long as you have some service such as Hemlane to be able to provide this ongoing communication with the tenant. It really allows you that flexibility. And at the same time, what I want to touch base on is on the investment side. A lot of people have this level of comfort remaining within the market that they're in, right? So I'm over here in Chicago. A lot of times the comfort level comes by staying in Chicago. But as we all know, every different city has their own economy and where they lay on the economic cycle. And so opportunities that may not necessarily make sense in this time period in Chicago, there may be another market outside of Chicago that has opportunities to invest in. And so from an investor standpoint, how does Hemlane kind of allow someone who doesn't necessarily see deals pencil out in their market, allow them to scale their portfolio elsewhere a little bit more easier?
Yeah, great question. And I want to back up there and just give one of my favorite examples of this, which is like it's the San Diego Pharma and Biotech Index. And if you look at that over a 10, 20-year period and compare it to the S&P 500, you would do a lot worse, right? And so if you are an investor in living in San Diego and you could only buy stocks in your neighborhood, in your backyard, you would do a lot worse. And so the question is, like, there may be a suburb outside of Chicago where you live, Chris, that is a fantastic place to invest. But why limit yourself to that? You should be looking at macro trends, employment trends, look at the population and what are the industries that are there. Like Fed, Ed, and Med is obviously the standard of where you'd want to invest and have stability. Once you know that you have a platform like Hemlane where you could pick up 3 rental properties here, 2 rental properties here, and 4 here, and it doesn't matter where you invest, you have a consistent property management experience, one login platform, you're not dealing with 10 different property managers. Suddenly you're able to say, oh, okay, now I can get the best returns. And what's crazy about it is today, what markets are great may not be great in 12 months. You have to do your research, you have to go through the numbers, and you have to stay unemotional to what are the numbers telling me and where are the trends going for this city that would tell me this would be a good investment or not. And then from there, you obviously look at the neighborhood level and all of that to figure out where to invest. But I think that the moment that you know that you can do that, you open up the opportunity to make a lot more money, and you're able to have much better returns that, like, in all honesty, the S&P 500 or nothing can really get you those. Real estate is a great vehicle to get to that financial freedom faster.
I love it. And so when it comes to having the opportunity to invest in other markets a lot easier than you otherwise would be able to, especially being able to have that single platform that you had mentioned, as opposed to working with a local property management company in one market, trying to source at another property management company in another. At least your experience as a property owner can be really universal, regardless of whether that market is. Now, when it comes to finding assets in a different market with a different set of rules and regulations and laws, how does that kind of work? Like, does Hemlane kind of stay up to date with the different tenant landlord laws in certain areas? Or if I want to invest in like Section 8 in one area and then I want to do a different type of rental model in a different area, how does Hemlane kind of integrate that, if at all?
Yeah, great question. So at the state level, we have those obviously followed. At the county level, every county is different. As you know, Chicago has much different tenant landlord laws than the rest of the state. And so what we essentially do is partner. We work with agents and we have property managers who use Hemlane as well. We partner with them. So if let's just say you wanted to invest in Section 8 or find and place a tenant in an area, we are going to set you up with one of the top leasing agents in that city who's going to make sure that you're following the regulations, has the county specific lease agreement, can help you navigate Section 8 there. And so we have those types of services where I believe where most real estate and landlord technology goes wrong is they think of it as a rent collection tool and like document storage, and none of those things are as valuable. Like if you talk to anyone out there who owns real estate, they're like, I don't want to get sued, I need to meet with local professionals. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
so different between what technology thinks can solve a rental owner's problems and what it actually does. And so if you know that and you keep that in mind, that's where that communication and collaboration of, you have your team members and you have your leasing agent and Hemlane and all these different types of features and services that you can get, that if you know you're investing in a place and you don't know the tenant landlord law, you can get access to those professionals that you need directly within the platform. And so from that perspective, and then the other thing is you don't have to go through the process of wondering if they're going to be good, because we already have other real estate investors who've gone through those agents, like a leasing agent, and we go ask them after every single time they go and find a place, a tenant. We ask the real estate investor, how did you like working with them? We're not going to tell them, but you let us know, because it will determine whether or not we match more people to them. And so that really helps, because it provides a platform where we know on our end transparently how someone is performing. We have all the metrics. We also have the qualitative data from other real estate investors in that area. And then on top of that, we can basically go through and leverage that to help connect you with the right support that you need.
Very, very cool. And so moving forward from here, let's say I'm in a position where I'm looking for another asset to purchase, and I want to try out Hemlane on this asset that I'm going to be, acquiring down the road. For the sake of analyzing my property, I mean, traditional property management companies would charge a certain percentage of rent. They charge a leasing fee based off of, sometimes half month's rent, sometimes a month rent, whatever that may be. Is that type of structure similar to someone who works with Hemlane, or is it structured differently?
It's structured differently, and we don't price that for any of the agents and folks that we work with. But there's different types of packages. So, like on the leasing side, you can, if your place is already make ready, you can find and place a tenant for $400. Like, that's how much you pay us in order to do it. If you need some local professional to put together the lease contract, that can be anything from, and if you need them to do the whole thing from make ready through, that could be anywhere from 50% to 100% of one month's rent. So it's totally dependent on the service and what you need. And then on the property management side, for example, with that, once the tenants are in the property and we have the legal contract in place, you can get anything from starts at $30 a month, goes to $74 per month per property. You can basically choose what service you want from that perspective. And so there are flexible packages. And part of the reason we make it flexible is there's not a single investor who comes to us with the same type of request. Chris, you might come to me and say, I know Chicago tenant landlord law great, and I actually want to place the tenant myself and do the showings myself for this property. And then for another property, you're like, I want to use a full service leasing agent. And so we will basically plug and play based on what you need and what services you want, exactly what package is for you in the platform. And then it would be it's all transparent pricing in there, so you know how much you're paying for everything.
Very cool. So if I understood you correctly, when it comes to leasing up a particular unit, let's say we have all the legal documents already in place. Let's say I have, I purchased or I created a lease in conjunction with a local real estate attorney here in Chicago. I have that drafted up. This is the template that I plan to use for, all of my properties. So given that that's available and the unit itself is available, is that where that $400 leasing fee would kind of fit into that? Gotcha.
Yeah, that you could just do the $400 leasing fee and then use your lease contract specifically for it. And so that's where, as you can imagine, as a real estate investor, suddenly the numbers in your cash flow look a lot better, because traditionally you have in your pro forma that you put together to figure out which property to purchase, you're putting standard numbers in there under your OPEX, and now suddenly those numbers have changed, and it's just a huge cost savings where your cash flow increases every single month.
Very, very cool. I love it. Well, Dana, I actually want to switch gears here before we head to our Freedom Five. And I actually want to talk about your experience as an entrepreneur, as someone who left their W-2 working for these big tech companies and go ahead and starting your own venture and growing it to the level that it is today. Many of our guests on the show are also fellow entrepreneurs who may be going through a similar journey as you have. And I kind of wanted to see if you're willing to share with us some of the experiences that you've gone through so far in this journey from startup phase to where it is today, and kind of comparing what your life looks like now compared to when you first got started.
Yeah, Chris, where do I start? How much time do we have? To kind of, I'll give you a couple, maybe three key insights in starting a business. First of all, it doesn't happen overnight. It always is going to take 4 to 5 times as long as you had expected. And the reason I bring that up is because if you're an entrepreneur and you have a significant other, you need to sit down with this person now and set those realistic expectations, because as an entrepreneur, it's hard and it could impact your personal life. And so fortunately, my husband and I were always aligned when I started Hemlane of how much work it was going to take, both time as well as investment and stress. And then two, we were going to be in it together and we were going to be in it for the long haul. So that's the first thing, that whether you've had that conversation or not with your significant other, you need to be checking in with them and making sure they understand where the business is, because it is going to take longer than you expected. The second thing I would say is about fundraising and capital. What will take your business under is running out of cash, just like owning real estate investments. When you run out of cash, you go into foreclosure, right? If you can't pay the mortgage. And it's the same with entrepreneurship. It's very hot to like raise VC money right off the bat. But the second that you raise capital, outside capital from a venture capitalist, or if you take a debt line or anything like that, time is against you. And so I would highly encourage when you start a company to not take money right away. Figure out your product market fit, figure out your customers, make sure your customers love you and your model before you even go out. Because the moment we raised that first round from venture capitalists where they gave us a couple $1 million, it was go time. We had to show numbers and progress every single month. And so you just want to make sure that if you're going to take outside capital, even if it's an angel round where your friends say, hey, can I give you some money to start your company? Make sure that you've reduced some risk there. So that's the second one. And then the third one I would say, which was really important in Hemlane is, it might take longer. You might need to raise more money from venture capitalists. You may need to, slow down to speed up. But one thing we always had true was we were always customer centric, always customer first. Customer has a problem, get on a call with them. Customer wants improvements, great, talk to them and listen to them. If you listen to your customers and you have those advocates, like our number one source right now of growth is referrals. Customers referring other customers to Hemlane. And if you create a business that is customer centric, whether you're starting a restaurant or you're going into real estate where you have tenants and they're your customer, as long as you set up a business where, hey, I'm customer centric, I care about my customer, everything else will fall into place, because your customers will then be honest with you. If you're talking to them, they'll let you know exactly what they think of your product. And that makes it a lot easier for you to build by being very close with your customers.
Very, very good advice there, Dana. I want to say that my wife, Angela, and I, apart from investing in real estate, one of the other things that we've actually expressed interest in is purchasing existing businesses from mom and pop owners that are looking to retire. As we all know, the baby boomer population is at the age right now where they're going to be transitioning out of whatever field that they currently in. And there's this large group of baby boomer entrepreneurs that are looking for a solution to being able to retire. And that includes selling off some of their businesses that they've worked many, many years to grow. And when it comes to purchasing these type of things, raising capital is definitely one of those things too that you had mentioned. But also another thing is acquiring these properties using your own funds to begin with. Now, when it came to making that decision to raise capital, to utilize investors as part of your startup and your growth strategy, as opposed to trying to go about this from a self-funded standpoint, I guess what kind of pros and cons did you weigh against to make that kind of decision from the get-go?
Yeah, I think search funds, what you're thinking about of purchasing properties is so fascinating. For me, so a lot of people when they or a lot of businesses when they raise capital, they try to well, first they're thinking about what other people are doing. And they're like, "Oh, well, Joe over there raised money for, his business. He's going to be going and acquiring, some florist business or something, so I should too." And they use this kind of it's like um this almost herd mentality of like everyone raises money, so like we need to raise money too to justify the capital. You know when you need capital because you've basically said, okay, we built this product, customers like it, customers are continuing to pay for it, they're not churning, so they're not leaving, they come back for repeat business, whatever your business is. And if I take more money, I can grow it more. If I take a bit more money, I can grow it more. And if you have that mentality, whether you're purchasing a small mom and pop business from a baby boomer or you're starting a venture backed company, if you are financially prudent in your decisions and you say, if I get this capital, here's how I'm going to spend it, and it's going to return 1x, 2x, 3x, whatever it is, then you can go out and get the capital and raise the funds. Too often, however, folks will go in and say, oh no, I just need the money and I need to go and build the product through it. And like that's not a good way to run a business. And so keep that in mind. Now, of course, there's a couple of different businesses that I would exclude from what I had just mentioned. One would be like biotech. Biotech requires a huge upfront investment before you have customers and things like that. And so while there are some exceptions to that rule, I think as long as you stay true to yourself of saying, I need capital. Okay, what do I need capital for? If I use this capital, how is it going to grow 2 to 3x? Then, of course, some things might go wrong and you might have to reset some expectations, but you've hedged that risk associated with it not going well and having to tell your investors that they don't have any money now.
Gotcha. Very, very interesting stuff. I in my experience so far, when it came to evaluating these type of mom and pop businesses, one of the things that I found, similar to you had mentioned earlier, in that like the focus really has to be customer centric. And one of the growth opportunities that I'm seeing in a lot of these baby boomer industries is that their focus has been customer centric, but in terms of implementing more modern ways of scaling their business through technology, through proper marketing strategies and things of that sort, that's where the real opportunity kind of shines when it comes to being able to take over some of these businesses. And so it sounds like regardless of what type of industry, what type of business that you're going to end up going down the path, as long as you keep yourself customer centric, I mean, that's really the foundation for success right there.
Exactly. It makes it so much easier because the second that you're not customer centric or your customers don't like you spend way too long on fire drills and bad reviews and this and that. So as long as you hit it up front and tell your customers, hey, Chris, if you don't like our product, just let me know. Just give me a call. Let me know. I want to make sure things are right for you. If you set it up at the beginning, at the onset, your customers might tell you, hey, I really think you need to change this, or I think you need to change that. But then if you take that feedback and you're able to iterate on it, you can build such a better service or product for your customers.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, Dana, are you able to kind of share some insight into that process that you went through before raising capital through venture capital? So it sounds like there's a lot of research and a lot of preparation up front in order to be able to determine what your target customer is going to look like, what the specific need is in the industry that you're trying to solve. I guess during that phase, I guess in your case, how long did that type of process take, and what type of resources are out there to kind of get that type of data that it is that you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of it actually comes down to you personally. And so, what I mean by that is, for example, when we started Hemlane, we'd called it something else at the beginning. I was still actually in business school, so I hadn't even left, but it was basically background and credit check software to help mitigate risk with having tenants in your property, right? Like that was phase one of what we started with. That was a fine business. That was a cash flow business. And basically on that kind of like software only of, hey, revenue, rental payments and background and credit checks and just doing the software stuff. That would be a great cash flow business. If I didn't want to raise money from venture capitalists and change an industry and create something that's never been created before, but I just wanted to offer what everyone else does, make some money off of it. We could have continued to go with that and we would have never raised outside capital. We would have just had our cash flow to reinvest into the business and pay ourselves and continue to grow and build. Personally, I wasn't interested in that. Like, we never wanted to build something that was just a software platform, just like any others. We wanted to change the industry. We basically wanted to create property management for the everyday person, just a whole new way of thinking about how to manage a rental property. And so for us, that meant building a platform-based approach that had a marketplace with all these service professionals. And suddenly it became huge.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, now we do need to raise VC capital. But when you build a product in a company, I like to use the analogy of like, you don't try to build the truck or the car first with like the tires, and then you like build the trunk of the car and the seat belts and the engine and all of that. You start with just the skateboard, and then you build the scooter, and then you build the car or the motorcycle, then you build the car, and then you build the truck. So if you can say, here's my vision and is where I'm going, start with something that those people may use, but maybe in a different way, and get those customers. And then those same customers, upgrade them to something slightly better, and then upgrade them and build something better. And then you finally build the car or the truck later. And so I think that is important when you think about building a business, because I've found, a couple of reasons why businesses fail. One, they think like, oh, I just, need to raise money or this or that. And either they're so dependent on trying to raise capital, but they're not getting it, that they run out of capital. That's one. Another is your significant other, where like your spouse is not in it. And the third is that there's a lot of people with a big vision, but they don't know how to get there.
Right.
And that's where you have to kind of start with something that immediately proves that you can build it, and then build the next thing and build the next thing. And so with Hemlane, we did that. Like, we didn't start with having self-guided tours and leasing right off the bat. When we wanted to prove out the service side of it, we started with just repair coordination. Chris, you need us to pick up your calls from your tenants? Great, we're going to do that. We're not going to do everything else, but you will just do this for you. And give us your feedback, Chris. How do you like it? Give us more feedback, Chris. How do you like it? And then continue to make that really good. And once you have customers loving that, the second you launch some new service, they're going to be like, I'm in on it. I want that service, right? Because you've proven yourself. And so I think that's actually incredibly important when you think about building a business. Is you might have a grand vision. There's huge visionaries, but they are never actually able to bring it to light because they don't have the right product roadmap.
Wow, that is amazing insights there, Dana. And I encourage people who are interested in going through this phase or are struggling with trying to take action or trying to figure out where to start, rewind this and re-listen to that, because that was definitely a really, really good piece of advice that Dana shared. I actually recently took a personality test and determined kind of what type of person I am from a business standpoint. There's these there's operators or executors, there's visionaries, there's integrators, there's different types of labels that you can kind of determine is more consistent with what yourself is. And myself was also a visionary, so I kind of see things at like this very high level in terms of I can envision what the final product can look like. But as you had mentioned, like, where do you start is the next thing. So that has definitely helped me. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So
Yeah, and I think if you're a second or third time founder, you can kind of build the semi truck because you've already have such a huge reputation, like kind of the Elon Musks of the world. Like you have such a reputation that you can do something and go to the moon that people will give you a ton of money to get to the next to build the next one. But if you're a first time founder, you don't have a name where like, you're recognized in the industry as like a top founder. You have to prove yourself in pieces and build that trust, and then do that time and time again until people have so much trust in you. If you go to someone and say, give me $100 million and I have an idea, they'll give it to you. But until you build it and show that trust at the beginning, it is really hard to get those large dollars right up front without kind of iterating and building as you go.
great point. Great point. Now, Dana, before we go ahead and head to our Freedom 5, I do want to ask you one question, and that is in regards to life in general and in terms of how you spend your time now versus how you spent your time when you were first starting the business. Can you kind of compare and contrast kind of like what your life looked like in that startup phase as opposed to now? Do you find yourself, I guess, more engaged in work, or do you find yourself allowing to get a little bit more balance between what is it you're doing from your work standpoint with your personal life? Kind of compare those two.
Yeah, I definitely have more balance now because we have a team, which is nice. I'm not doing it all 24/7, 7 days of the week. But there's a huge difference. When we started building Hemlane, there was a lot of ambiguity. We had this vision, we had kind of the building blocks of how we were going to build it, but there was still an ambiguity of certain things. And let me give you an example. Repair coordination, should it be centralized or decentralized? Now in hindsight, it's like, oh, duh, of course it should be centralized. But you don't know that until you go through that process. Nowadays, I spend more time. So that was more of like thinking and not knowing the answers, but having to iterate on product and just try things out. Now I spend all of my time with people. My time now is all spent on building a world class team and who are going to be the next big rock stars who are smarter than me to help build Hemlane. And so most of my time is spent with people, whether it's customers, whether it is a new hire, but it's spending a lot of time with people and building the team.
I love it. Well, there's a ton to break down there, but we'll definitely have to save that for a second coming on the show for sure. All right, folks, so we're coming towards the end of today's show, but before we finish, it is time for the Freedom 5. These are 5 questions that we ask every guest on our show, starting with the most important question. What is your why? What is the underlying motivation behind everything it is that you do?
I think it's when I retire, I want to make sure that I made a huge, meaningful impact on the everyday person where people say, wow, they actually changed my life. And so we're doing that through the rental industry.
I love it. Second question we have here. What book has had the largest influence on your life?
Lexus and the Olive Tree by Thomas Friedman. I really love that balance, especially now with technology, of how you bring innovation and also keep culture and roots and history. And it's a really, really fine balance.
Perfect. I got to check that one out. It says Lexus and the Olive Tree.
Yeah, Lexus and Lexus, like the car company, and then
The
the
car
Olive
company.
Tree. Yeah,
Very
yeah.
interesting. Okay. Third question we have here. What is the most impactful thing, whether it's a piece of technology, a habit, or a person, that has helped in freeing up your time?
I would say the biggest thing I would say is hire. So your recruitment process. So like hire slow, fire fast. Really make sure you have people who are smarter than you working for you, because a group of A plus players will run circles around a group of B players. You just really need to make sure you have the right team in place. That will free up your time. But if you don't have a good team in place, everything's a fire drill. You're constantly jumping into things. So make sure that you have a really strong team around you.
Really good insight. Yeah, it's just like who, not how, the book, in terms of like trying to get things achieved and figuring out who you can put in this place as opposed to how to solve that problem. It's a key component there.
Yeah,
Fourth
definitely.
question we have. What is the number one piece of advice you would give to anyone looking to achieve more control over their time?
I would say um, it's very much of a personal choice and decision of how to do it. But what I would do is say, if you want more time, you're going to have to spend the time now to get more time in the future. There's no quick easy wins to getting your time back in your day. You will need to, like, you can't say by Monday I'm going to like quit my job. What you need to do is block off Saturday and Sunday and sit there and look at your financial situation and say, this is where I need to be. How am I going to get there? Is real estate going to help me get there? Is buying a business going to help me get there? And if you can do that strategy work and spend every Saturday and Sunday doing it for 3 months, you're going to be in a much better position long term than sitting there hoping one day you'll get there.
I love it. Love it. And Dana, finally, what is the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so go to Dana, DANA at Hemlane.com, or I should say email Dana at Hemlane.com. Or you can also go to our website, Hemlane.com, and ask for Dana there. But I'm much better with email than my phone.
Fantastic. Well, Dana, tons of really great information today. I loved how you shared your experience as a personal landlord in the real estate space, and at the same time, the struggles that you went to that kind of sparked your interest in trying to find a solution to those everyday problems that landlords experience. I love how you talked about your experience with Hemlane and what Hemlane itself has to offer that differentiates itself from other software companies in the space. And finally, I love how you talked about your experience when it came to starting up your company, the process that you went to systematically grow it to where it is today. And finally, the mindset and the planning that goes into creating your life that allows you to kind of get yourself in a position to scale. So I just want to thank you so much for being a fantastic guest on our show. And I look forward to remaining in touch.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Now, if you like this show and want to learn more about how we can help you free up your time through passive real estate investments, check out www.freedominvesting.com. Make sure to subscribe to our monthly newsletter and schedule an introductory call with our team. We also have a free 7-day course on what passive real estate investing is and how to get started so that you can start your journey towards earning back more time in your life. To all of our amazing listeners here on the Freedom Investing Podcast, my name is Chris Rubio. Till next time.